I'm at the Mercure Portsea Golf Course. Over the years, I get to stay at a lot of different places, whether it's a converted horse stable or a wine cellar. It's really quite fascinating, some of the places you get to see. As we're travelling, Alex mentioned to me, "Dad, have you ever painted a golf course?" And I love the game of golf. Never really sort of thought seriously actually about doing a painting of a golf course. But I thought, always up for a challenge, so let's see how I go. For this early part of the drawing, I like to use a French ultramarine blue and a little bit of permanent alizarin. It kind of mimics the atmospheric effect nicely. So the further I'd go back with it, normally just favouring the ultramarine, French ultramarine a little more than the red. But then as we come forward, especially in that mid-distance, I'll start to use a little bit more of the red. And if it's a more developed little drawing, I may even add a little bit of yellow to the foreground in the particular subject. But with this one, it's mostly sort of just laying in those big areas with the big brush. So normally if you're ever watching previous videos, if I've got a red handled brush, it's normally my size 12 hog hair made by an Australian company, Art Spectrum. Rosemary & Co do have a good chunking hog hair brush, but if anything, they might just have a fraction too much hair for my liking. So I almost like to cut a tiny little bit out, where these are just about ideal for me, where I am getting a good amount of hair on the in the brush to do what I need, but then it doesn't make it too difficult to clean. And I think that's the key. Having it thick enough to do the job. See, I'm laying in those big foliage areas, the big tree shapes. It's just a great way to be able to blast in and get those big shapes in place. So that's would have just been a little bit of yellow ochre, blue, and a tiny little bit of red into those shadow values. So it's almost like sort of doing just a standard landscape actually, but I think the big game changer really is the sand bunkers. That just gives it a lovely bit of highlight or light and great focal points, but it kind of identifies it with being a golf course. And whenever we're painting, we're really sort of doing a visual narration of what's in front of us. Of course, we can't use words, so we use shape and colour to get that message across, and value, of course. So now block in a bit of a blue sky. The weather does change quite quickly in the southern part of Australia compared to Queensland, where I'm from. And the one nice thing is normally a little cooler in the southern states, even in summer. Will get very hot on certain days if it's blowing in off the desert, but this was a lovely southerly breeze. Kept it nice and cool. So I'm just generalising with this background value, not trying to look for any individual tree shapes. It's more of a backdrop. For the landmass, it's kind of my ultimate backdrop. So I'm trying to bleed out as much colour and warmth as possible. And there's a few little buildings in the background as well. And I'm just using a little bit of variation. There's a little bit of yellow foliage trees in that mid-distance there. So once again, I'm using a little bit of a cooler green on that right-hand side, just above where I'm working now. That little bit of yellow, mostly a uniform yellow ochre, ultramarine, French ultramarine blue, and a little bit of red for that, just that unified foliage colour. Even though in the background I probably use a little bit more of the cadmium red, because the danger is if I went really green in the background, it's just going to be greens on green. But there was quite a fair bit of that red, cadmium red in that foliage in the background. And I had quite a nice little shadow in there, a few little shadows poking out. But I always love to work wet in wet. I think that's where you get the blending, you get the really great effects. But the trick truly is putting that first coat on super thin. If you can see the board or the canvas through, that's perfectly okay. It's more that first coat is more just a bit of almost like a trial run. It's that very suggestive nature of what we think we need, but thin enough that I can go over very easy, but thick enough that to be able to just get a bit of a look. And I think the other great secret is not to play with that or try and make it better. And I think that's where we can get in a lot of trouble. That's why it's more put it down. If you're off by a mile and you've just made a bit of a mistake, rub it out. If in doubt, rub it out is my sort of thought process. But yeah, to leave it as it is, because that second stage really is more about knowing or working out what needs to be adjusted, not so much how much detail do I need to get in. It's all corrections from that second, third and finishing stages. Just doing the little adjustments. As you can see, I'm just coming in and getting those nice little tree trunk shapes. It just sort of helps to identify what that shape is aiming to be. Just gives us that little bit more descriptive information when it comes to the finished painting. Well, that was a fun painting for me. It really got the adrenaline going. It was an exciting little scene actually in the end. As it started to develop, I could see the potential, and that's painting at its best. When you get those good darks in, get good depth, lovely shapes, it was just perfect. I really had a great time. Hope you enjoyed it as well. All the best. Bye for now.